Welcome you to today's EUKI Academy web seminar, Building for the Future, Policy Directions under the 2024 Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. So as the title suggests, today we will get more into the building sector, especially seeing the start of the new commissions. We'll get into the priorities there and the mandates for member states, and also how projects can help implement those. And for that, we're joined by the EUKI project Renocally, which has been running for almost 2 years, and our partners who helped us with this web seminar at the Buildings Performance Institute Europe. And with that, I would already hand over to my colleague Sibylle Stoiber.
Thanks a lot, and a wonderful good day to everybody. Yes, I'm Sibylle Stoiber. I'm head of the BPIE Berlin office, and I have the pleasure to moderate you through this EUKI Academy web seminar today. We are at the moment at the crossroad in the EU with a new parliament and a new commission that are not necessarily pursuing the same objectives as the old commission, or that was the case in the last legislative period. But at the same time, we have the legacy of the old commission now finally beginning to take effect with a new EPBD now being implemented and transposed at the member states level. So the new EPBD provides new provisions, the minimum energy performance standards, the mandatory requirements for member states to establish renovation passports, and the introduction of a life cycle perspective in the building sector. And it requires also the review of existing provisions, such as the energy performance certificates, but also the building standards for new buildings in general. And this is what we want to address today. So what can we actually expect from the new commission and from the parliament for the building sector? What should be prioritized, and how can existing projects help to improve the new requirements, and how does this actually also matches the Commission's agenda? So we will first have an overview by my colleague Volodymyr Vadika on what to expect from the new Commission, and then we will zoom into two topics. One is the new perspectives on the global, on the whole life carbon, the life cycle perspectives in the building, where we have now the requirement to disclose actually the global warming potential for new buildings. And secondly, we turn to the Renocally project and look into how that project results could help member states to actually implement the renovation passports as one of the requirements. And with this, I am handing over to my colleague Volodymyr Vadika, please.
Thank you very much, Sibylle. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining this web seminar. So as Sibylle already mentioned, I'm going to talk about the new European Commission and new European mandate and arising priorities on this level. So without further interruption, if we can go, yes. So here is a small recap what happened throughout the last half a year. The new European Parliament was elected, and also the new European Commission took office. And we see changes, a lot of different changes, and these changes are important because they will define now the work of the European institutions for next 5 years. In the next slide, we can see the Parliament, how it changed. Probably many of you already know that it shifted a bit to the right-leaning parties, and this means that all energy and climate initiatives and actions will be led by right-leaning vision and narratives more than before. In the next slide is also visible the European Commission that was elected actually last week. It was elected and took office a few days ago. And here are a few key European commissioners that are important for buildings and overall also for energy and climate. So here the most important for us is Dan Jorgensen. He's a commissioner for energy and housing, and a few others are Teresa Ribera, the vice president on clean transition, Wopke Hoekstra, the commissioner for climate, Jessica Roswell, the commissioner for environment, and Stéphane Séjourné, vice president for industry, which is especially important considering the construction industry and one of the topics of current discussion, whole life carbon. So let's see what Commission put forward during these several months, which were different discussions in few last months. So one of the priorities that Commission indicated for next 5 years, and especially for the start of their mandate, is the implementation of 2030 package. Another one, they will be proposing the 2040 climate target and adopting the another package of post-2030. The first bullet point, as you can see, is specifically important for EPBD and other laws which were already adopted this last year for their implementation. But there are also certain new initiatives like Clean Industrial Deal, which is important for industry, and it will include such issues like affordable energy prices, circular economy, and Industrial Decarbonization Act. All of those initiatives, they are pretty important, but and they will be relevant to buildings, but to make them directly relevant to buildings, it's important for us organizations in Brussels and also other organizations working on energy and climate to make a good advocacy case for this. So we need to shape it to include life cycle carbon of buildings and other policies that concern buildings. On the next slide, we can also see several other initiatives, which is quite important for buildings, like European Affordable Housing Plan that Commission is going to work for towards, which includes issues on construction, but also upgrading existing framework on buildings like state aid rules, and developing as well the investment platform for affordable housing, which quite importantly, Commission indicated several times that sustainability topic is very important for these housing actions. Another, just a few key words that Commission will continue working on new European Bauhaus. It will do climate adaptation plan, and it will work on other things like public procurement directive and revision them. Here, after these presentations, the slides would be shared with you, I believe. So you may look at this yourself as well. So let's go to the next slide. And in the next slide, you can see we, as BPIE, we produced the paper which indicated from our side what are the most important aspects for the new European institutions to look for in future. And here are 10 different recommendations that we try to share within European institutions and our contacts even before those initiatives that I just went through were put forward. So for the sake of this presentation, we'll focus on the two of them. If you go to the next slide, there will be this first and seventh. And yes, we can already skip to the next slide. So the first is successful EPBD implementation. What we ask the European institutions to do towards helping member states and advancing the action on buildings is importantly swift and effective implementation of EPBD, supporting an effective development on national building renovation plans, which is very, very key to guiding all the action in future years within member states, and then also support member states with good practices and exchanges of best examples and innovative policies, which quite importantly, we also try to highlight the whole life carbon, asking for sharing the whole life carbon practices. And here within this, you can already relate to the previous slides. You can see that European Commission highlighted that implementation of the policies that are agreed, they are quite important for them. So we hope that Commission will work on this in future. But what's more, we would like to also suggest to European policymakers to create an EPBD implementation forum, which will bring the most important stakeholders and give the discussion among the challenges or opportunities on implementing EPBD more high level. So that's it on EPBD implementation. And on future-proof buildings, we also highlight several aspects which are a part of this discussion, such as EU roadmap for whole life carbon reduction, public procurement work considering the circularity aspects. You can also relate to other slides again, because the Commission will work again on public procurement, and it will work on the issues of circularity. So from our perspective, we need to further advocate for it on the EU level and see that they are uptaking this. Otherwise, we also want to highlight that extended producer responsibility principle and polluter pays principle, they should be uptaken within the consideration of future plans and initiatives of Commission. So these are basically our recommendations on these two important things. And now just to clearly understand what is ahead of us as everyone who needs to implement EPBD, but also as energy and climate community, we clearly see that there is a lack of building decarbonization progress, and that the action is needed. For instance, last week you can also see in our website of BPIE we published the building climate tracker, and it shows that the gap is widening and the action is needed. But we should move wisely through two different streams, we can say, to achieve the change. One of these streams would be to keep highlighting to the European institutions that the work is needed, that let's put the good practices, please help the member states, help the regions to implement effectively. And another would be to actually try to implement, support technically each other and implement EPBD to give a boost to building decarbonization. And this is very important because for the next 5 years, it will define the importance of the Green Deal as a political success overall and the action of buildings. So here, wrapping up, there are two publications that we published. One, this Buildings Prosperity of 10 priorities that I was talking about. Another one summarizing EPBD. You can check them out, and yeah, it was a pleasure to present. I'm looking forward for the discussion afterwards.
Thanks a lot, Volodymyr. I think we're taking the questions afterwards. I think you're all invited to put your immediate questions in the chat so that they're not forgotten, because we have quite a tight schedule at the moment, and I would rather like to go through our presentations first, and then please remember your questions, and then we go have some time to take your questions in a panel discussion. And with this, I would like to hand over the word to my colleagues, Carolina and Julie from the Indicate project. And I think Carolina will start. Please, the floor is yours. It's really what's the status of data for whole life carbon in Europe.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sibyl. Right, so my name is Carolina Cornen. I am a senior researcher at BPIE. Before diving into the Indicate project, I just thought I'd start with to make sure that everybody is on board with the terminology that we use here. So this already came up in Volodymyr's presentation, but when we talk about whole life carbon, this is sort of the sum of two different types of carbon in the building sector. The one that most people will be well familiar with is what we call operational carbon. So this is carbon from heating, for example, and from electricity, and that's sort of in the use phase of the building. And when we talk about whole life carbon, we also add the embodied carbon emissions. So this is the type of emissions that are associated with building the building and extracting and producing the materials and products that make up the building. So just to make sure that everyone's on board. Now, right. So the Indicate project that I'll be talking about today, it's actually a second cycle of a similar concept of project, where we recently finalized the first one, which was ran from 2002 until 2024. We had pilots in Czechia, Spain, and Ireland, and this, like, the timing of this project was then the EPBD was still under revision. So this was more of a sort of explorative, looking at some of the front-runner countries in this context and trying to come up with a concept for how to regulate whole life carbon. Now that we are in the end of 2024 and the beginning of the second cycle of this project, as you can see, we have some new and a few more pilot countries, where you can see we also have representatives from Central and Eastern Europe. But now the policy context is a different one, because we do know the final version of the EPBD, and it's now about implementing this legislation. So a quick sort of snapshot of what is the state of play when it comes to regulating whole life carbon in the building sector in Europe. We have some countries predominantly in the Nordics and in Western Europe that have, before kind of EU moved on this, they were already putting in place regulations nationally. Now we also have a few more member states that are kind of, they're one step ahead still, because they are anticipating the EU legislation. But as you can see, there's still a large number of countries where we're kind of starting from scratch with this. So you could say, I think both the work that's going on in the EU, but which is also the work that the Indicate is trying to support, it has two purposes. One is to make this EU-wide, but in a way that is comparable. And that also means that we need to converge a little bit these front-runner countries who already have something in place, without sort of reversing it, but making it with time comparable between different member states. Next slide. There we go. Thank you. So some of the results from the first Indicate cycle that I wanted to highlight, I picked out like one qualitative result and one quantitative result. And what we did in Indicate qualitatively was to look at these front-runner countries and trying to summarize a framework for regulating whole life carbon. And this is the figure that we came up with. And as you can see, you can roughly divide it into two main parts, where one is about building a data foundation that allows you to define the status quo, how much carbon is emitted typically when a building is being built in this country. And then building from that, you can start looking at where do we want to be, how do we define this performance, and how do we get to below a certain threshold value eventually. But it's also important to have supportive policies along this process, predominantly by engaging stakeholders that will have to be part of this solution. And I should say, this is like the very high level. So each of these steps also includes a number of different choices. What kind of units do you use when you are talking about carbon emissions? What kind of floor area do you divide these emissions by? At what point in the building permit process do you ask to have this data reported? So there's a lot of things to be considered in each of these categories. And I refer you to some of the publications that we have released in this project, which will be linked at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. I talked a little bit initially about the need to create comparability between member states, and this is indeed important, but it's equally important to understand that member states have very different baselines to start from. So when I say that things need to be harmonized and comparable, that doesn't necessarily mean that threshold values and target values will be the same, like numerical value. Because one of the quantitative results from the Indicate 1 project was showing the different sort of baselines between the piloting countries. And as you can see on these numbers, it can vary quite greatly. And you need to find something that is individual for each member state, which is both feasible and ambitious. And that will mean different things in different member states. So here again is why this data foundation is an important recipe for regulating carbon, because you need to know what you're starting from. Right, next slide, please. Right, so tying back to the EPBD and what's coming up now next when we're trying to implement the whole life carbon measures from this European directive. So from the Commission side, we are looking at two work items that will come out from them as like secondary and guiding secondary legislation and guiding documents. The first one being a delegated act, which will form the basis for how you're supposed to measure the carbon in the different member states. And this will have to strike a balance between being kind of harmonized, but allowing enough flexibility for different member states to take into consideration their different status quo of the building stock and different domestic industries, etc. And then based on this delegated act, member states will eventually have to design a roadmap for how to like regulate their whole life carbon from the building stock. And later down this decade, towards the end of this decade, we will have like reporting requirements kicking in for large buildings, and then eventually they will extend to all types of buildings and also include thresholds that are set at a member state level. Next slide, please. And this table shows, again, it shows the timeline, but in a bit more detailed way. This slide comes from a recent stakeholder consultation meeting by the consultant that is supporting the Commission with this delegated act. And I think the main thing to take from this is that this is it needs to move, like member states need to move fast. This is not a lot of time to do this work. It should be sufficient, but it doesn't allow to sort of drag your feet. So member states need to get started immediately to build this data foundation and eventually define the thresholds in their roadmaps, etc. And as you can see here also, the Indicate project is ongoing. It's right now, it's in this sort of building capacity phase, but the impact of it will come further down the line when we see how these roadmaps are actually set and what target values will have to be met in different member states. Right. I think this was my last slide. Am I right? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Carolina. So, I am not sure, because we do have a plan for Julie to have a second part of this presentation to give us some insights about Czechia. Julie, are you here? Because I haven't seen you. Yeah, that's perfect. Great. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay, just to ask you, do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, because I meet some problems with the internet today, so if not, I will switch off my camera. Yeah, so I'm here to share some experience from the Indicate First Stage project, which was in Czech Republic. And I wanted to share with you some like key activities, what we did and what we achieved actually during the 1.5, almost 2 years of project. These are the main activities which were done, like the case study selection, stakeholder engagement. We had to develop consistent whole life carbon methodology for producing the case studies, and we had to talk with policy makers about the whole life carbon method and benchmarks, and for sure we had to establish several next steps which are important to do for the implementation of the EPBD. Regarding the case study selection, we first met with the stakeholders. They were quite a lot of them. We collected the case studies directly from the construction industry. It was the real cases, all of them, so real buildings. We must have that in mind, which buildings are actually the best to assess regarding the benchmarks development or like the preliminary benchmarks suggestions. And then we discuss this selection with the policymakers to get their support actually, because we for sure wanted them to use the results of the project. And then we also discuss the selection and the case studies with the stakeholders. Next, please. Yeah. Yes, this one. We actually include in the like, let's say, partners list, we included, I think, almost all of the possible target groups which are touched somehow by the EPBD recast. And we had a work group with them. And we really tried to meet with them a lot and to talk a lot and discuss the things that they wanted to know and show them what's possible to do. Next, please. Yes, and we gathered kind of positive and negative ideas or feedback, let's say, from these target groups, and which can show us like the overall attitude of the building sector regarding the EPBD recast. And it's good that they all feel that it's quite important, that something big is actually happening, that they are really happy to be part of the implementation if they can talk about it and they can express their ideas. They also want that it's a just process and a consistent process and very transparent. And they also feel that they want to be on time with the EPBD implementation. And they are really interested in the results that are coming from any like case study development. On the other hand, they feel and they talk about it a lot, that they feel the cost and time pressure of all the measures, and they think that maybe it could be unacceptable for many of them. They are also exhausted because there is another version of EPBD and they do not have capacities for implementing it. And they also see that they don't have sufficient input data and tools for the whole life carbon assessment, actually. Or that's the status in Czech Republic. Yeah, next, please. And during the project, that's why actually during the project, one of the main targets was to use a unified and consistent methodology to calculate all the case studies together in one way to get at least comparable results. If not really representative, because in Czech Republic we have problem that we don't have national LCA database, so we had to choose data based on kind of data quality assessment, which we carried out internally, and we had the one like unified database for our use, which we used for all the case studies together. Yeah, next one, please. This consistent methodology was so important that it's for sure included in the final results of the project, which can be then distributed and is already distributed to the stakeholders. We have a position paper for policymakers. We have also policy brief with more information, and we have a quite large white book with all the details of the calculations and all the process of the project. We also have some best practice examples like leaflets of the building case studies that everyone can see and see what is actually going on. We also produced a lot of webinars, and we had a lot of workshops. So also the videos from these let's say meetings is available. Next one, please. One of the main let's say one of the main tasks was to persuade or to talk with the policymakers about the complexity of the issue. I mean, of the LCA or global warming potential calculations, because the first thing that we always hear from every policymaker is that they want to have it quickly and easily, and it shouldn't be complicated. So there's something that we talk about with them, and here on the bottom of the slide you can see how it actually works in Czech Republic, that the process of the whole life carbon implementation is not logical, let's say, and in the first row you see how it should be. So that's what we try to explain them, and we try to proceed like this. And now just to sum up what's done, we were able to or achieve to have a quite large net of stakeholders from the building industry, which are actually happy to cooperate with us, and who also trust us that we are trying to do it in the way that will help them and in the future. We also have quite strong connections at the ministries that are responsible for the EPBD implementation, and they count with us as specialists. And we also have some first steps of education behind us. But there is still a lot of things that must be done. First step should be the national LCA database, which is actually already in progress, and we are working on it. Then the methodology should be approved and should be in legislation. We should provide some guidelines for the building practice, how to actually prepare their projects for LCA, even if it's about bill of quantities or BIM. And we still miss national calculation tool for whole life carbon. And for sure, we would like to produce more case studies than the 56 we produced during Indicate, even if the sum was quite good. Yeah, and that's all.
Thanks a lot for sharing your insights. I think it was very interesting to look also into how you did this at the country, at the member states level. We still have one more presentation today, and I would want to invite Alexandru Coman from Romania to talk about Renocally, which is a project funded by EUKI to roll out building renovation passports, also a requirement now at the member states level. So please, Alexandru.
Thank you, Sibyl. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well and you can see me. If not, you can tell me and I will turn off my camera. My name is Coman Alexandru. I'm the energy efficiency expert for the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Agency IATRER in Ploiești, Prahova. And today I will be presenting you the building renovation passports in Romania. So if you not know about Renocally, the project was funded by EUKI, which is a funding instrument for projects supported by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Actions. This project has partners from Bulgaria, an effect, Buildings for the Future from Slovakia, Terra Millennium 3 from Bucharest, and Buildings Performance Institute Europe. Running over a period of 2 years, this project aimed to strengthen the capacity of municipalities and decision makers in Bulgaria, Romania, and Slovakia to decarbonize the building stock of these countries in a cost-effective manner, taking into account legislative changes. So these are the 5 municipalities for which we have already made the building renovation passports. The municipalities in Prahova County benefit from their building renovation passports to have a structure for their future in renovation processes in a clear and sustainable steps. You can go on the next slide, please. So, what is a building renovation passport? The building renovation passport provides a detailed and tailored roadmap for the renovation of a specific building in multiple stages, and that will significantly improve its energy performance, thus allowing the municipalities to plan a step-by-step intervention for energy efficiency in the public buildings. So some other advantages that are offered by implementing the building renovation passports are the lower energy bills, because that will help the owner save money on the long run. Increasing the comfort is improved air quality, reduced environmental impact, and it will increase the value of the building on the markets on the long run. You can go on the next slide, please. This was the first building renovation passport that we made for Lipanești, which is near Ploiești in Prahova County. It is currently serving as a medical center, not been rehabilitated in the last 14 years, and it has a big potential for improving its energy performance. You can go on the next slide, please. These are some pictures made after the on-site building analysis by our energy auditor. Next, please. The current state of the building is rated currently on a scale of C regarding the energy performance and the pollution level. Next, please.
Maybe you turn on out your camera because it's a bit with some hiccups.
These are the package. Yeah, sorry. I turned off my camera. These are the package of measures which, after implemented, it will improve the rate of the building, the energy efficiency of the building, and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Some of them are like getting heat pumps, putting solar panels, air conditioning, ventilation systems, replacing the windows. Next, please. You can skip this. Okay, so what were the challenges that we are facing in elaborating and implementing the building renovation passports in Romania? So one significant challenge is the complexity of administrative processes, because the renovations often involve navigating a lot of bureaucratic steps, from obtaining permits to access available funding programs. Also, the initial cost for renovation is still a barrier, because energy efficient renovation can lead to significant savings in the long run. The upfront investment can be a deterrent for many owners. Also, the local partnerships are critical, because collaborating with local governments and authorities can help integrate the renovation passports into urban development plans and sustainability programs. That would make it more visible and applicable to local needs. Also, the long-term sustainability is a key focus, because the insights and the methodologies from the Renocally projects can serve as a model for scaling up renovation efforts across Romania, contributing to the country's climate goals and helping buildings be more resilient to climate change. Also, the lack of expertise in the field, because we have many energy auditors. This concept of building renovation passports is relatively new across CE. Lack of one-stop shops. I think the one-stop shops are very important because they can provide the information about renovation at the local level. You can go on the next slide, please. And some lessons learned. One of the main lessons was the need to build capacity to implement local renovation policies using the models as the building renovation passports, which provided them with a structured and realistic plan to reduce the emissions in the municipality's building sector. Also, the municipalities recognize these building renovation passports very important, and the training sessions and practical examples presented throughout the project show that local authorities can become leaders in decarbonization, but they need continued support in terms of resources and expertise to make it happen. It is important to have an energy efficiency assessment of the building, the municipality's building stocks, to have a better understanding of their priorities. And the project Renocally demonstrated the importance of elaborating financial strategies and delivered a clear roadmap for future renovations in municipality. So that was my part. Thank you, and I'm looking forward if you have any questions.
Thanks a lot, Alexandru. And I think we're now having some time, 15 minutes, to answer some questions. And I will stop sharing here so that we can see each other. Also, I invite you, if you want to speak up, to turn on your camera and pose your questions. We do have one question already in the chat, and I think it's directed to Volodymyr, because it came also directly after your first presentation, Volodymyr, related to how likely is it that even the Commission's ideas and plans that they want to push forward will actually be adopted in the Parliament. I think that's the first questions, and the big questions of implementation, like who will pay for it. And maybe also attaching to this question, my question of really what will fly in the next legislature and what might be more difficult to be implemented.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very good question, and also this another question that was also mentioned. I try to keep the answer concise but also explanatory. So here with the first question, I guess it's referring to the new approach, like less red tape, less administrative burdens, more investments, for instance. And yeah, on the first part of less red tape, it depends how we also frame it, because the politics is a very strange thing, and what will fly or not, it also depends how we politically frame it. So for instance, if we talk about the new initiative, like we mentioned, affordable housing, it depends also because affordable housing can be also housing which is very poor, has a dump on walls. Those who lived in post-Soviet countries would understand what I'm talking about. And from here, we need to advocate that, okay, look, we need a healthy, affordable housing, which will be sustainable and energy efficient. This is one thing. When we talk about broader thing, like for instance, security, we need to say that, yeah, decarbonized, efficient buildings, they are very useful for decentralized energy system and therefore for energy security. Like, yeah, so when we talk specifically about EPBD here, I think it may result still into strengthening some aspects while weakening some other aspects. For instance, investment aspects, they will be strengthened. For instance, Article 17, maybe it will get more attention from the new European institutions. While other aspects like data monitoring, maybe they will be weakened. The renovation passports will see them more as a voluntary tool and not really required anywhere. Less attention will be to roll out like one-stop shops, for instance. But again, this all depends how we frame it, because we can also frame renovation passports as an investment tool, as something that will guide the market toward, more GDP overall and more investment in sustainable buildings, and will lead to positive change. So yeah, highlighting two words that's about the politics question, how we frame it, and it's how we use this political change still to advocate rightly towards these issues. And I also like this second question there, I can also ask it, but I guess like maybe some other questions, if there
Yeah.
are, I can also leave the floor for someone else before going
Yes.
to.
I really invite you to raise your hand to pose your question. If there are no questions so far in from the audience here, well, there is one. Maybe you want to explicate your question, Elisa, please.
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
you
now
hear
we
me?
can. Yes, now we can.
Well, I put two questions on the chat and I have not seen them addressed.
I think
So one of them, let me repeat them for the ease of the panel. One of them is that I saw the number of recommendations for regulating the new energy performance of buildings. And given the latest discussions at very senior level that the EU is highly regulated, do you think that the members of parliament and the European Commission will adopt more regulations? That's the first question. And the second question, typically buildings, energy efficiency and performance will be the responsibility of local authorities. I don't think they have the capacity. It's going to be a lot of time and effort, and especially cost. Who will bear the cost?
Okay.
thanks again. I think we can also, like, maybe you want to answer something for the first question, Vladimir, but I think also our colleagues from Romania can maybe have a word to say from what they learned from the working with the municipalities in Romania, because I think the cost aspect was a crucial one as well.
I think, thank you again for these two questions. I think these two aspects are very important that you highlight. For the first question, regarding what I already said, it's about the framing politically issues. Well, they say no red tape, no more regulation. I don't say we need to regulate more. It's more about bringing the attention that buildings, they can give you a potential, and you need to provide more funding for buildings, provide more solutions toward buildings, because we can see in the European Union level, when something is politically sound, it can get a long way, even if it doesn't make sense. If something is not really politically sound, or you can politicize it, like we saw in buildings in the European, in some European countries, they were spreading a lot of information that wasn't really true on what EPBD was requiring. It can get a little bit difficult. So it's about politics, most likely. And so let's see how it evolves, because now we cannot really say for sure. Regarding the second question, if I can say that truly it's an important highlight, and this highlight should keep on saying, from what we already have, we have social climate fund, which can support certain parts, specifically on vulnerable households, which it's one of the sources to supporting. Then there will be next year, there will be discussions started on multi-annual financial framework, so with the cohesion funds, and also other instruments, investment instruments like housing investment instruments of EIB, which I mentioned in one of my slides. Yeah, but again, I want to very shortly highlight the importance of national building renovation plans and developing them right now, because they will show that there are certain gaps, and whether they are on the whole member state level or on a community level, those gaps, like capacity gaps, should be visible in national building renovation plan. And with this plan, it will be clearly visible, and member states can go to commission, show, highlight, then they can think about solutions, maybe dedicate more money for buildings in the end, you see. So it's all about
yeah. I think that's an important point that you mentioned, that the National Building Renovation Plans in its draft version have to be handed in by December 2025, so 1 year to go, and then member states need to provide an overview about the building policies they will put into place in order to reach the targets, and they have to do it rather comprehensive, and I think it's could be a real steering tool to do so. And one important thing is that the EPBD requires the municipalities to actually consult it, and I think that's an important opportunity for projects such as the EUKI Renocally, which works with municipalities to give them a word to and feed in the learnings of those projects into the national consultation processes. And maybe, like, just looking at Diana and Alexandru, if you want to say somewhat, because I also want to hear Christina's question, which I see you have raised your hands, but maybe just a short feedback on maybe what you learn, what you draw from Renocally, and could possibly feed into this national process of implementing the EPBD now.
Yes, through our project and through other projects that we try to implement in our area, we feel that municipalities are, other than lacking capacity, which we all know, have the need to build their skills, and our role is to raise awareness and to bring up these instruments that exist for them, like the building renovation passports. That is how they will build trust in such instruments, and they can implement them. It's also very important for them to plan at the local level, like the financial renovation strategies, which are very important, because they have to be really aware of their building stock and what are the measures that they have to take in order to reach the European goals, because time is passing, and there will be a time when they have to act, and they have to be prepared for it.
Thank you, Diana. And I have another question here, Christiana, please, if you would like to speak.
Yes, good afternoon. Hopefully you are hearing me well.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity and the information. I have also written something on the chat, but maybe it cannot be seen. I can see it. Anyway, there are 3 points that I would like to raise and ask. Conflict and on regulations and different roadmaps. We face them among the municipalities and the national policies, and this comes to the point that the gentleman before me was talking about. It's going to be a hard case for the municipalities, maybe unless the buildings that the municipalities own or they have a jurisdiction to work on them. But they are not capable of creating new rules for them. Anyway, this is what we have realized from almost a 5-year project we ran on green materials and buildings. The second, which is a question, is do we have any news about how the things are going on aluminum industry? Is one of the main industries that they do affect the building's energy and the performance of buildings. And according to what we face in here, there is no progress at all, and there is also unwillingness for them to participate and work with whatever we do on this structure. And the third point is and question is there something that will face what we call energy poverty, because the socioeconomic groups are and the vulnerable groups are really very much behind capabilities. I mean, they are totally incapable to participate or let's say be benefited by whatever we bring up. So I think for them is much more on financing that should be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I have written in the chat is whether there is a position or where there is a chance to cooperate in any future projects. But this is written in the chat anyway.
Okay, I think that question will be taken up by Carolina. I think we maybe can't give an answer here. Like I would maybe,
fine. Okay.
I think on the vulnerable households, I think the social climate plans are probably an important part that have to be also drafted by the member states, if I may answer this shortly. And of course, the EPBD has a special focus on ensuring finance for those groups. I think that it's in the spirit of the EPBD. We do not have so much time to deeply go into answering your questions, but I would still like to give the word either to Julie or Carolina on the aluminum question. I don't know if you have an answer here or maybe want to share something here.
I mean,
super shortly.
I have to say, I'm not an expert specifically about the aluminum industry, but what I can say in relation to our project is that, the energy mix of the location where a material is being produced, that's something that we've seen in the project, that it can have a very big impact. And this, of course, will affect the aluminum industry, because the cleaner the energy mix you have around your factory, the more competitive that aluminum will be from a whole life carbon point of view. I realize this might not be precisely the question you're asking, but what I'm saying is it is definitely a factor in the whole life carbon view of things.
Thanks a lot. Time is flying, and we have reached the end of our 1 hour web seminar, and I would like to thank you for your contributions. I think it's an important time ahead of us now, and a lot of support is certainly needed at member states level, and you clearly highlighted also the role of municipalities and the need to figure out solutions on financing this. And with these words, I'll hand over to my colleague Levin Kettler again. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you also from the EUKI side to all our speakers, but also thank you to all of you for being here. I don't know if I've mentioned it in the beginning, but this was the last web seminar that we're holding for this year. And for that, I would ask you for one more thing before we leave. We have a short evaluation. My colleague will put it in the chat. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. If you have the time, it takes less than a minute. I think you can just click on the link and give us some feedback. That's always valuable, because of course next week and next year, of course, we'll be starting again with the web seminars. So for that, just keep a close eye on either the website or the social media or the newsletter to keep up with the newest events. And with that, once again, thank you to all of our speakers, and especially to BPIE for this web seminar, and I wish you all a great rest of the day.